Welcome to the Spy Guy Friday panel. Judge Knapp has a panel. Why can't I? So we are here joined with Adam Zachary Wasserman to talk about whatever the heck is going on in the world. And we hopefully will be joined by David S. Libertad a little later. But he did say he had an upset stomach, so we'll see.
Oh, hello, everyone.
Hey, so what's been on your mind lately, Wasserman?
Well, last time we talked, we said maybe we'd talk about that unfinished paper that I have, the paper where I have to add the South America section to it.
Yeah. Okay. So, what was your paper about? And
yeah. This was I don't know if you had a chance to read it. It was a draft paper that I sent discussing how much of the West labors under the misapprehension that the fall of the Iron Curtain was the end of communism.
Yeah. Well, China and Cuba certainly have different viewpoints on that. They've managed to keep their communism going pretty fine, though China seems to be much more of a fascist state than a true communist one nowadays. But Cuba certainly went along with that ride, and Venezuela seems to have a bit of it, but communism in it, but it does still have free and fair elections.
Absolutely. Well, but it's more widespread than just that. Here, let me just let somebody know. I'll call them back. And so, yeah, it's actually much more widespread than that. Communism was pervasive in the Middle East and Africa and India and South America, and to an extent that's really, really underplayed. So the impact of this failure to recognize communism has led, in my opinion, some really, really misguided foreign policy from the West. You know, because if you believe that it's your foreign policy decisions that cause people to dislike or hate you, then you will also believe that you can fix the problem with foreign policy.
Right.
On the other hand, if you start from a very different premise, which is that people dislike or hate you for ideological reasons because they're communists and they hate everything that the U.S. represents, well, then that would lead to a very different set of policy decisions.
True. Yeah. Certainly, we see influence. Well, technically, the opposition, loyal opposition in Russia, is the Communist Party. Like, people wonder why Putin gets 90% of the vote when it's like your next biggest political party is communism. Like, it's Putin or communism. Like, that's your choice. I think might be writing someone else.
Well, also, I mean, I have to say, and this is something else that's equally unrecognized in the West, I defy anybody to tell me when life has ever been better for the average Russian citizen in all of history than it is right now.
It's pretty good for them. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, of course, if I was a Russian citizen, I'd love Putin too.
Yeah.
I could send my kids to school without worrying about if they're going to come home or not.
Yep. Hell, I was watching one woman who lives in Russia, and she was like going back to her high school. Agent Nesty is what she calls herself. And she goes back to her high school and she's like, what? They have working toilets here? This is outrageous. I still had to go to the outhouse when I was going to high school.
Making Russians soft. That's right.
Yeah, we certainly see the influence. We have probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of hardcore Marxists in the United States and other Western countries right now. All these young people who experience the long march through the institutions and come out on the other side thinking that no true communism has ever been tried. And we see the communist influence in the European Union as well.
I had a very interesting short-lived exchange on a technical site the other day. So there's a technical site called Hacker News, and it's run by Y Combinator, the startup incubator, and there's all sorts of different conversations on there. And some relatively young person posted something about how they had become a communist and they enjoyed living on people's couches instead of supporting themselves. And I'm not exaggerating, by the way. This is literally, you know, and then he could use his money to do things like buy hardware toys for other people he felt was more deserving. And so, you know, I thought about it, and I wrote back to him. I said, well, actually, let me read you exactly what I wrote.
Okay.
Because I said it so well, then I'm not sure I'll do myself justice unless I read it. So what I said was, and this was something about, and in part of his, in the context of what he posted, it was something about how everything he had been taught about self-reliance growing up was wrong.
Oh, okay.
So I said to him, I wonder what it was that you were taught growing up. My grandfather was a through and through communist, a Red Russian who came to the US after escaping a Nazi firing squad and living in the forest for months. Once in the US, he organized labor and got blackballed by McCarthy. And yet what he taught me, for as long as I can remember, was that life was not fair and I had no business expecting it to be. He taught me that if I failed, it was no one's fault but my own. He taught me to live by my wits, how to survive outdoors in the winter, how to shoot, how to fix machines, how to work wood. He raised me to survive a collapse of civilization because he had lived through one. For him, self-reliance wasn't opposed to his politics, it was forged by them. I'm not sure what to make of your post, but I wanted to offer a different picture of what a communist might teach.
Yeah. No, my mother's father was a communist. Apparently, he landed on a beach in Normandy on June 6, 1944. He was in the Canadian Reserve Brigade, so he didn't see much fighting that day. But of course, he got to fight through the Scheldt, which is some of the worst fighting in all of World War II.
The Canadians really got wiped out there.
Yeah, and but I later learned from my mother's friend and my mother that he was a communist, but he wanted to believe in the universality principle that communism is all about equality of all people.
I like to believe that my grandfather was a Menshevik and not a Bolshevik, which is a distinction worth making, but I don't know for sure. It's my conceit that I believe that.
Yeah.
Oh, how can I say this? I would describe communism and Marxism in particular as an example of drawing the wrong conclusions from some good observations.
Right. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Or some decent observations. Now, Marx, maybe not so much. Marx himself, as far, I have a very, having read Marx from the
only the edges of it.
So I joke around. I say that science tells us that the human body is 98% water. However, as far as I can tell, Marx was 98% contempt for his fellow human being.
Yeah, sounds about right. Certainly had contempt for Engels, even though he lived off Engels his entire life, from what I could tell.
He had, as far as I can tell, literally. I'm saying it a little bit jokingly and facetiously, but I mean it. As far as I can tell, Marx had contempt for every living being except for himself, and his writing drips of it. It's very difficult for me to read Marx because of that. It's like jumping into a pile of pig shit.
Yeah,
it's profoundly what is the word I'm looking for? The asexual term for misogyny.
Androgyny?
No, it's when you hate all humans, not just women. It's
oh, okay, not misandry, not mis.
Yeah, I forget what it is. I always forget that word. But yeah, he, as far as I can tell, he hated all of humanity. And in his own words, everything that exists deserves to burn.
Yeah.
His favorite, So it's like, it's really not hard to, and so it attracts, leave it to people's imagination to what kind of people are attracted to Marx and captured by his writing.
Yeah.
So, that was the point of this paper, which is that, you have these large populations throughout the world, who are axiomatically opposed to the United States, and the West in general, but most particularly United States, because it is, by mere fact of its existence, a refutation of the core principles of their ideology, and no amount of foreign policy will ever fix that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does seem to be true. Yes, there seems to be a large group of people who want to destroy the United States ideal for their own reasons.
However,
And
there is one place on earth that's remarkably free of communism:
hmm,
Russia.
yeah, yes, that's true. Even though the opposition party is communist, yeah, the Russians have gone through. There's a few other places that have the similar situation. Poland
And they
and
are not clamoring to go back.
yeah. Once you in Hungary and a few other places that are just sort of like, you know what? Nah, we see where this is going.
Oh, remember, kids, you can vote your way into communism, but you have to shoot your way out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's what the paper was, is in brief, and I had originally started writing it about India. Then I expanded it to include Africa, and the Middle East, and then I realized, well, I should. Honestly, South America is equally deserving of inclusion, so I have to redraft the paper to include South America. David S., who, by the way, I saw that he just messaged us to tell us something.
Okay. Well, I'll look it up here.
David S., provides me valuable feedback, because I do all this by remote casting, right?
He's going to be about 15 more minutes.
Okay, so I don't have extensive living experience in any of these countries, and David does, and so
yeah,
I really rely on him as a sanity check. I asked money for a sanity check, but I haven't heard back.
the guy's kind of scared off the face of the earth. I don't know what that was about.
Yeah, he just, like, from one day to the next, it was like gone. So, but yeah, I'm sure he's busy with something.
Yeah. Well, I do worry about the prince.
I had a very nice space with him a while back. It turned out he and I were the only ones showed up, and we ended up talking about all sorts of personal stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, I do worry about him, his tendency to get all wound up. I was worried that he had a heart attack or something. And so,
David or money?
Not money or David. I mean, the
prince. Oh, the prince. Yes. Yeah. Well, he has completely disappeared, and that's very unfortunate. And I don't think I have. I think I did reach out to him. I don't have any other method of reaching him except for X, and so.
Yeah, he did tell me he had a YouTube channel once, so I think.
Well, I know his. If I dig, he's a journalist and he has a public presence. So I mean, I suppose I could try and dig him up and see what's going on with him. I miss him a lot. In spite of his excitability, I enjoy differences of opinion, but also it's every now and then it's comforting to find somebody that has the same fringe opinions you do. So
yes, it does. Right. That's why we kind of do this thing here. There's just so much out there, but yeah, I understand. Like David S. was pointing out, that a lot of the spaces have just become. I don't want to say circle jerks, but just echo chambers.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone kind of gets driven out if you have any kind of opinion that isn't conforming with the Israelis or the Muslims or whatever group of people that is going on. There's some of the American First podcasts or spaces that are still good, but I don't really listen to them much.
Hey, by the way, I think the last time we were on, you and I chatted briefly about two-way.
Yeah, you can talk about that.
Something that's going on there, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, Dan and Sean left. For those who don't know, Two-Way is a podcast that's being run by a guy named Mark Halperin, and he's very associated with Megyn Kelly. He used to be he is a Main Street journalist. He was running a show which was kind of like political playbook for Washington, D.C. And two of his co-hosts recently left to form their own show. And we did have, there's a post show that goes on. And so I get to, they allow live callers to come in via Zoom for free, which I thought was interesting. And they would spend the last 15 minutes of the shows talking to people. So I've been on there a couple times. And there's a post show where a lot of those people gather for a couple hours after the show. And on Monday, we had Dan Turrentine, who was one of and Sean Spicer, the two co-hosts left. Dan Turrentine came on and answered a bunch of questions for those in the community. They wouldn't get into the specifics of why they left, but the feeling is that they didn't want to get associated too heavily with Megyn Kelly's new lineup, which Mark Halperin has gone down and joined that particular network on Sirius XM.
Yeah, well, it's this whole association with, I don't know. It just reeks of I hate to bandy the term about, but it just I'll use it. I won't use the term. I'll say it reeks of self-censorship, and I hate it.
Yes, a little bit of self-censorship there. They certainly didn't want to be. I don't think they want to be associated too much with Tucker Carlson.
Well, it's that whole associated with. It's that's the danger. It's like you may associate me with Tucker Carlson, but what matters is whether I do.
Yeah, right.
Have at it. Associate me with him all you want.
Yep. Oh, it's just like one of the guys on the two-way post show is this very heavily. I think he lives in New York, but I wouldn't swear by it. And he's very pro-Israeli Jew. And he's got like a giant flag of Israel on his wall. He's always wearing the skull cap, and he has the neck scarf on. And he and I get into it sometimes, and I'm like, dude, like Israel is making the wrong, and you, more importantly, as David S. would talk about, the Jewish Americans are making bad plays by just constantly calling anyone who would criticize Israel anti-Semitic. And I'm like, you can't really make that conversation with me, buddy, because I try to marry a Jewish woman. And she really resented Israel far more than I do.
Oh yeah, well, I'm a Jew who's never liked Israel. I don't like the Middle East in general, contrary to David S. David S. likes it. It's just a personal preference. I don't like Middle Easterners. I don't like Israeli Middle Easterners. And by the way, I grew up with half my childhood was spent with an Egyptian stepfather. So this isn't some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Some kind of ignorant prejudice.
Yep.
It's an informed decision about personal taste. I don't like it, and I have my reasons, and I can articulate them. And it's just not a culture I enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's just a matter of but these guys are really pushing it. And I'm like, look, I get it. The Likud got to power in the late 70s, and they made a strategic alliance with the emerging moral majority out of the United States. But the United States is no longer, the moral majority is no longer in control. And Israel needs to make new allies. And going around calling everyone who disagrees with you anti-Semitic is just alienating people. You need a better strategy. And he's like, you're so ignorant. You're not. He hasn't called me anti-Semite yet, to his credit, but he just has argued a lot with me. And I'm like, dude, you're just not helping yourself here.
I call all that stuff post-hypnotic triggering. You can tell the minute the shades go down on the eyes and you're no longer talking to a human being, you're talking to a post-hypnotic suggestion.
Yeah. It's just, but to me, it's quite obvious. Like, you want to appeal to Christians, make the argument that will work for them. Like, say, look, if these radical Muslims get in control of Israel, they're going to have nuclear weapons, because Israel has nuclear weapons, and they'll tear down Bethlehem. Do you really want, you need us here to be running the show so we could protect your holy sites? That will appeal to Christians. That's a much better argument than just saying we're then if you disagree with us, you're just anti-Semitic. That's kind of my thought.
Well, we're all gonna have a. It's just that right now there's no tax or penalty to pay on. How do I say this? You could say anything you want about Christianity and Catholicism. Nobody's going to come down on you.
Yeah.
So
until we do.
It's just it's the flavor of the day, or the Overton window, or whatever you want to call it. Or go back, go back 10 years, 12 years ago. I could have said anything I wanted about hating the Middle East, and would have been met with applause. So.
Yeah, and I think people are definitely looking at that. Like, look, to me, all these people are like complaining about Qatari influence, and it's like it's just that scene from God, what's the movie? Network, where the guy says, "You, Mr. Beale, you've screwed around with the primal forces of nature, and all the money has flowed into the Arab world, and now it has to flow back." And that's what I look at a lot of the stuff that's coming out of Qatar or anywhere else in the Middle East. It's just that they have all our money and we need it back.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure they're the ones that have all our money, but
yeah, well, they have some of it at least.
Yeah, some of it. And I think we don't have to look too far to find the people that have all our money.
Yes.
They're close to home.
Yes, those people as well. But what do we got here?
Very good. So but it's I'm well aware that my preferences are my preferences. I can get along with David S. and he can love the Middle East, and I'm not mad at him for it. So, which is how the world should be, but it's just not the way it is recently.
Yep.
Do we? What else is on deck today?
Well, we can talk about just stuff going on in the world. Like, just a friend of mine is asking me for something here, so I'm just.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm multitasking myself. I'm restoring service to a crashed internet application while we speak.
And here it is. David S. has finally joined us.
Hello. How are you today?
Okay, how are you?
Just in time. Thank you.
Well, I ate some kind of a goulash last night, and I told them that I don't eat Eastern European food without sour cream. They didn't know how to make it, and I'm paying the price today. But anyway, so here we are from sunny, hot, which is very nice, Argentina, but extremely expensive. So the next time we do this, I will try to get a holder for the phone. I'm sure will make things a little bit better.
Yeah,
it's amazing how
I have a kickstand on my phone.
Pardon me?
I have a kickstand on my phone.
Yeah, I have to get one of those. They're not expensive, but if you want to do these television things or whatever, I guess one really needs to have one. So I promise the next time we'll behave better. So what are you guys talking about? And I'll give you a little brief on Argentina, and we'll go over to Europe. So.
Well, I wanted before we start, because Wasserman here got an introductory on the first time he came on. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and the audience there, the future audience here, David, about who you are and what you do.
Well, I was at one time a well-paid vagabond, and now I am a not well-paid vagabond. So my academic background, strangely enough, is as a classical pianist, basically specializing in German opera and in chamber music. And then in my business, because I spent a lot of time in Europe, I started to become interested in the Middle East, not only because I have ties to Israel, but because my second interest has always been transportation of one type or another. While I was playing music competitions in Germany, I was also exporting cars from Germany to Syria. So this was back in the 70s. And when you do those type of trips, you learn an awful lot about how currencies work, parallel markets, control markets, what is really on the ground, what is Europe, what are the different things. And so after a while, I decided I wanted to make more money, so I got more into travel, and I became one of the main arbitrageurs in the air ticketing business back in the day when you didn't have this, three companies controlling everything. And we really learned how to manipulate currencies, how to take advantage of soft points. And how does that relate to politics? Well, it does, it doesn't. It does to the degree that if you're going to be in that business, you're going to spend time in a lot of very, very interesting countries. And you're going to learn how those countries operate, talking countries like Nigeria, Libya, Bolivia. The best was Venezuela. So when you spend time in those places, you get, in the end, a very unorthodox approach towards what the media says as to what actually goes on in those places. When I did go to USC, in addition to music, I had studied international relations with Willard Beeling from Aramco, so I that. So that's me for whatever it is. So that's
Yeah,
I've
well,
been
we
in
were
interesting countries on.
And while you were plying your trade in arbitrage, as we once discussed briefly, I was a young whippersnapper of 40 years old trying to fight you. So when I was at IATA, I was at IATA, and I was actually in some ways like a key force in process mapping, e-ticketing, and travel entitlement in order to.
Business e-ticketing was. I remember when the first ad came in the New York Times. It was either the New York Times or the Washington Post or Wall Street. They all came on the same day. A United ad with a huge zero, with zero. I don't know if you remember. This was 1992 or 1993. And I said, well, this is not possible. I was in denial, and I realized that would be the beginning of the denouement of uh, exactly what I did. I mean,
I
the
joined. I
horror of
joined,
not
I
being able
joined
to.
in '98. I was a little bit later than that, but
No, but the ad for e-tickets started in 1992.
yeah.
E-tickets actually came out about 1996,
Yep,
but
but
you
they
still
didn't
have
really.
a
They,
four.
did,
Are
they
you?
didn't have. They didn't have good interlining mechanisms, and so the key thing I did was I created industry process maps that allowed them to unify an interlining using e-tickets.
Well, there you go. You see, in the old days, when we would speak about the interline agreements is you would go, say, to the Dominican Republic, or you would go to Cyprus, because in those days there were real countries with real airlines. Nobody realizes that. So what you would do is all small airlines needed cash flow. So, and in those days, the large carriers, and being uh, the most prolific one, would give agreements to every little airline that would come out of the woodwork. So we would have small airlines. This was when they still had the old system of proration and provisa, and you would then get all these tickets. And as long as you would put a small segment on the small airline, you could then write a $10,000 ticket. But then what you would do in those days, under the old system of the FCUs, you could start a ticket in Kinshasa and
Yeah.
just do little segments, Kinshasa to Nairobi to Congo to Uganda, and you would write segment after segment after segment that the customer would never see. So
Yep.
very long paper tickets was controlled on the airline. And then what you would do is you would refund the segments with the permission of the airline at times. Sabina, for example, could never get around the Civil Aeronautics Board in the old days, no competition. So how
So,
did they
so
get competition? They relied on these small carriers
and so what
to
people don't.
basically create.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, the
So what?
background I think the non-experts need to understand is airline tickets used to be a piece of red paper, and that piece of red paper was, for all practical purposes, exactly like a bundle of cash. And what I worked on and what I helped fix was the piece of paper went one way, and the passenger and the money went another way. And the reconciliation process between the money and what happened with that piece of paper was long and arduous, often taking up to years to complete its round trip. And so while the people who were handling the piece of paper had no idea where the money went or what happened to the money, you could do a lot of things.
Well, I mean, literally, with Venezuela, without even having the ability to refund segments once the nukes came into being, literally by combining a difference of currency of 65, 70% and being able to use fictitious points, I could create a first-class ticket between New York and Hong Kong and back for about $3,000 when it should be $12,000, $13,000, and perfectly legally because it was with the permission of the airline. Until the airline tells you to stop. Now, generally, why did Venezuela last as long as it did? It was the single most profitable market for American Airlines because all the tickets were priced at $900 to go 3 hours or 2.5 hours between Miami and Caracas. So anywhere else, if you went to Santo Domingo, the same $900 ticket would be $230, $240. So what would happen was Venezuela and Libya for a while were both in a very unique situation. And that usually these parallel markets happen when countries don't have any money. And so they don't last very long. In the case of Venezuela, what most people don't realize, was extraordinarily rich for about 5 years. When oil went up to $140 a barrel, I don't know if anybody remembers that.
I remember that.
Chavez,
the dollar was worth more than the American dollar for about a year.
Yep.
Yeah, hilarious. So basically, they did not have any problem, Venezuela, in paying the rates. They were just playing with the cash flow, and the airlines knew they would get paid 7-8 months later. But at the end of the day, finally, once Obama ended, what?
I said at the earliest. 7 or 8 months later.
Okay, so one of the reasons that Obama put such a pressure against Saudi Arabia and on Russia to lower oil prices to $28 a barrel, $26 a barrel, was to crush Venezuela, not to crush Russia. And so basically it was a stupid policy. But American Airlines, just to give you an idea, was having 6 flights a day to Venezuela. It was something really, really fantastic. But you see, the airlines wanted that business because they made a fortune, and they were making enough money in their regular domestic business to wait for the profits on that. So basically today, there are reasons why there's no more parallel markets. Number one, technology cost. We went to low cost, to the idea of unbundling, which I think was the worst thing that ever happened in the airline industry. Do you know what unbundling is, Wasser?
I can't remember. I just remember because that's all fair conference stuff, and I was
so at one time you would board an airline, you would have a boarding pass, you would have a nice meal, you would have a nice pillow, you would have a nice drink. The airlines decided they wanted to eliminate that charge. What they did was they would have, and this is what people understand, in New York they would have focus groups. And so what the focus groups would do is grab anybody from the street that didn't look completely homeless and didn't smell, that could get into a reasonably good hotel room. They would give them $200, and they would ask a series of questions. Don't you think it would be fair for the passenger that wants the meal to pay for the meal? Don't you think it would be fair for the person that wants a drink to pay for the drink? Don't you think it would be fair for the passenger to pay for baggage instead of denying the person that doesn't have those? Well, the answers were predetermined.
Right.
So what they do is anybody that dared not answer the correct way wouldn't get invited back, and anybody that answered the correct way would be assured of free meals and $200 a couple of times a week. And that's why these focus groups are really such a joke, because big corporations basically have already determined how to get the correct answers before they.
Yeah, and it's worth
So the airline
talking.
industry we have today is a shell of what it was. It's a disgrace.
Oh, it
But
is. It
people
is.
don't know the difference.
It's
That's
a
the problem.
disgrace, and it's
Also
also a danger.
hotels. Hotels have also
It's also
I was in Europe for 2 weeks. I stayed in a reasonably good hotel. Did not stay at the Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons or Kempinski or anything.
yeah.
What?
I was going to say it's an interesting dynamic what you're describing about the
Am I
unbundling.
breaking up or are you breaking up?
You're breaking up a little bit, Dave, but we were used to it.
Yeah, I was
Wasserman, are
saying,
you there?
yes, I am. Can you hear me? Well,
Are you there?
I'll keep
I
going.
guess Dave's having his famous
What
issue.
David was saying about the unbundling is interesting at a macro level because it was in the airline industry, and because of unbundling that I realized or learned that there's a repetitive cycle in all industries about the application of technology, which is that when technology is first introduced, the early adopters see it as a competitive advantage. They try and erect barriers to other companies using the same technological innovation. Eventually, it penetrates to the entire market, and then the behavior reverses overnight, and they try and reduce it to a commodity. And they try and seek out common providers. They let go of the in-house innovation. They turn it over to a common provider who just brings it in as table stakes for everyone to have, no longer any competitive advantage. And you can see this over and over again with technological innovations.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's happened today in the airline industry. Most of the airlines, except for maybe Lufthansa or British or American, they have outsourced absolutely everything, from call centers to technology. The worst thing actually is to revenue protection because that goes to India. And if a travel agent gets an agency debit memo for whatever reason, there's no way to fight it because the airline is actually giving the outsourced agency in India a very large commission, maybe 30-40%. So basically, you're driving travel agents out of business.
Well, people used to ask me what I did at IATA, and I'd say, well, we have five main businesses: restraint of trade, market division, price fixing, influence peddling, and money laundering.
Exactly. I
I
didn't
mean,
realize the money was there was such huge amounts of business in the airline industry. I mean, the cash flow. I mean, people would literally start airlines before your time. Like I've been disconnecting, I'm back. Just to get cash flow.
mhm.
And so today, unfortunately,
Today, unfortunately, he's broken up again.
it looks like is this my.
Yeah, and maybe he's going to reset. So, but that's very interesting stuff. You bring out David S. and you just normally we're thinking about talking about foreign policy in the Middle East, and then suddenly we're getting history of airlines.
Yeah, well, I wanted to take the opportunity because we David and I we cross paths a lot online, but rarely did we have a chance to talk about old times. So
Yeah.
Well, the best times were, of course, from the 70s to the late 90s. I think that the beginning of the euro started the problems, although you had a couple of good years with the euro, even though I was opposed to it completely. But once the financial crisis hit in 2008 and the technology and the so-called GWT, Global War on Terror, basically all these different arbitrages that allowed people to make money, at least in what we did, disappear. Now, it's still there today, for example, in Argentina, if you can get in on a carry trade, but you have to be at a much, much higher level. Whereas before, everybody could make money. Today, it's a minuscule amount of people that can make money. So you actually, after the 1960s, you had a 30, 40-year period, which is almost unique in history, I think, where
yes,
you had a robust middle class that could participate
yeah,
in many of these arbitrage opportunities. and that has now been eviscerated again in the name of efficiency.
I had a
So
friend
we're
who
going
did it.
back to a kind of a very, very high rich class, almost no middle class. And
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. I had a friend who did that with telecoms interchange rates.
oh yeah, I mean, the people are still doing it, but I mean, no, telecom was a wonderful business. Well, the best part of the airline business that you and I never participated in. And the guy over, who's one of the big guys over at One Travel in Atlanta, did this. At the fall of the Soviet Union,
Mm.
you didn't have to have much money. All you had to have was about $40,000. And if you just got out of your comfort zone and went to fun places like Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and all these other countries in Russia, you could literally rent a cargo plane for
Mhm.
$40,000 and ferry everything under the sun down to Africa. And that's where fortunes were made. And
Mm.
you had about a
Breaking up on us again. But yeah.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, though, David, you opened the door to a good transition. I'm going to have to duck off in about 12 minutes.
Okay.
But David, we could ask David what his thoughts were on the paper that I circulated. David, I'm planning to add South America because South America is just as deserving as India or Africa. But I know that you would have interesting things to say about the observations I made in that paper.
Well, if he has the chance to speak.
Oh,
and he's gone again. Okay. Well,
yeah, for those who don't know, this is a regular feature when communicating with David Siegel. This is how it goes.
yeah.
Could I
Here
go
he's
to a
back.
better internet location? Would you like me to go to a better internet location?
Yeah, you
Well,
should.
watch
You
him
should.
because he has to bow out in 10 minutes.
I
So
can,
we'll take our chances.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying
I
I have to go in
yeah,
10
I'm
minutes.
having a very bad. If you can wait maybe 5 or 6 minutes, I can get to a better internet location.
I'll hang on while you do that.
Okay, that's fine. We can.
And then when we come back, we'll go back to the normal subjects. But there's nothing as much fun as talking about who was in those old industries when those old industries were really good.
It was
Oh,
the Wild
I
West.
I was a little tyke of 40 years old.
Yeah, well, I was at the World Travel Mart in London the last time we had this session, and I spoke to ex-airline guys. Nobody likes it today. Anybody that's from that period, nobody
Soulless.
likes what's happened in the airline world
It's
today.
soulless today. But David, go get a while I can still
Better
be
sleep.
online.
I will be
get a-
back.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I mean, everybody always, nostalgia.
Yeah, let me try to just.
Yeah, nostalgia is always that way. Oh, things were better in my time, and things are
Yeah.
soulless today. But
Yeah, I was listening to Russians with Attitude a while back being interviewed by some people, and they were talking about like what the Communist Party in Russia really is, and they're basically it's the party of when I was young.
yeah,
Everything is so much better before the Soviet Union fell. The kind of people.
there is a fabulous movie about an elderly woman in former East Germany who wakes up after a decades-long coma, and her children don't want to tell her that communism is over because they don't want to upset her. So the movie is all about the extravagant lengths they go to try and convince her that she's still in communist East Germany when she wakes up.
Well, I think it's a matter of not when you were young. It's a matter of types of industries. Arbitrage has not disappeared at all. It's just once again for a very rarefied few. Whereas at that time, because we were in a transitioning period and we were in the time of the currencies, it was available to everybody. Not everybody. It was still a very, very few people. But if you compare what it is to today, what it was 30 years ago, I would say you probably have almost 1,000% differential in who could really make money. That went along with, by the way, being able to afford a home, to buy a home in the United States. To do other, it's impossible for a young person to buy a home today because they start at $500,000. So unless it's for very few people on Wall Street that get a job.
I have a different perspective on that because I'm in the Midwest, and I mean it's easy for a young couple to find $100,000 home here.
Yeah, Texas is pretty good too. I'm hearing the prices are dropping because they've kicked out all the illegal immigrants.
Well, it's starting to get better in Florida, but it's still not. Florida, South Florida, you're still looking at, instead of 500,000, you're looking at 400,000. Well, what is a 25-year-old going to be able to do with a $400,000 house? I mean, it's and where this leads to, and we see this in Europe right now, and it was alarming when I was in Spain. It's again that nobody's making babies. It is alarming. You can see it on the street. You don't see the strollers. You don't see the babies. That's not a good sign. When Spain only has 300,000 births last year, something is wrong with the system.
Well, but I will say again that your perspective on these things really matters, whether or not you're in a coastal metropolitan center or whether you're in some heartland somewhere, and it's not like that here.
Well, maybe in the Midwest. I mean, I'm definitely a cosmopolitan city person, but when you do see it and you get those statistics now. Before you called today's podcast, alarming piece of news came up once again on DW News that all German males have to register for the military in 2027. So I think we're going to see another culling coming up within the next 4 or 5 years.
Today, Ukraine.
They're doubling down.
Just look at.
I said, David. I said
Ukraine has lost a horse.
I said today.
Ukraine tomorrow.
This is
how could that go wrong?
Yeah, Germany is a country where it's legal for soldiers to walk around.
Well, the bottom line is
civilian life. These people think they can rearm. I'm just like, I'm sorry. I don't see any Adolf Hitlers around ready to lead these people to battle. They don't have that kind of like someone who can create that nationalist spirit in them anymore.
Well, this will be the saving grace in Europe. The saving grace in Europe is the whole woke thing. In Ukraine and in the Slavic countries, you have that sense of nationalism, so you can recreate this will to go to war. The same thing that existed in Germany in the 30s existed in Britain, never existed in France, by the way. And if you look, France never went to war in World War II. So, but Germany can change on a dime very, very quickly.
Yeah, that is true. I just don't see the guys running the joint right now capable of pulling that off.
Well, all of Western Europe is still up in the air as far as I'm concerned. It could very easily topple in either direction. It could completely self-destruct, or there could be a resurgence of populism and nationalism, which saves it. I'm not sure which will happen.
Yeah, I know. AFD's official policy is if they get in charge, they're pulling out of the euro. That's their number one goal. And if that happens, it's game over for the
I wish I could stay to see what David's going to say, but we'll catch up next time, David. And nice to see you. Nice to see you too, other David. And see you again.
Okay.
Soon.
Nice to see you. New one. We'll schedule it a little ahead of time. Unfortunately, I had some ailments today I had to deal with, but we'll schedule one and put an agenda for the next one. Maybe it would be nice to get Money Circus on so we can talk about the financial aspect.
I know.
We definitely want to get more people on these panels.
Well, let's just do it earlier. I'm good to go earlier.
Okay. I'm good to go pretty early unless it's a snow day.
You're seeing here in Europe, this is all financial, and
Right.
it could end up but the last time it was financial also, and it could
Okay.
end up very badly. Well, we had a nice little airline discussion today, so uh, okay, so we'll come back and do another one next week.
See you
Yep,
later.
that's good. Maybe we can make this a regular Friday thing, kind of like Judge Knapp with his thing.
Yeah,
We can do our round table on Fridays.
It's a pretty good day for me. Yeah. All right. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, Judge Knapp is interesting, so I'll see
Yeah.
you. I'll see you all later. Thank you very much. Bye bye
Thank you.
now.
Okay, bye. And yeah, so that was our first Friday panel. Hopefully, we'll have more. We have other people we've encountered in our travels that we can bring on to the shows and like interview and get going. Like, who knew that we would get this fantastic discussion on how the airline industry used to work and how it was a great way to make money back in the day? Like, I just grew up in the 90s watching all these movies and dreaming of being like one of these wildcatters going to Russia and just helping explore things. And these guys were doing it basically renting airplanes for 40 grand, which was a substantial amount of money, but starting up a business, I'm sure they got the loans and they started like flying cargo from one place to the other without any of the restrictions that fortunately we've built up over time as people, as the man, if you want to call it, really got in there and made it difficult, squeezed out all the little guys, all the Han Solos, all the Michael Caine characters, all those type of things. We used to have a much more interesting world, all the little the Hammer Studios for those horror fans out there. So anyways, that was our stream for today. I might do another show later today on one of the, like I might do a case file or something. But I'm glad thanks for watching, and we'll do more of these in the future. And if you like this, I suggest you like, share, and subscribe. Okay, bye-bye.